There are moves in Santa Clara that do not come in screaming, but they poke at you if you know how to read the room. A rookie minicamp tryout turned into a contract. One depth name walked out the door. On the market, a veteran defensive lineman could become a name to watch after June 1. On the offensive line, a rookie is stepping into a battle nobody should treat like a small detail. And even QB3 has turned into roster chess. Hit that like button because today is about small signals that could lead to big decisions. The first story only looks small if you read a roster like it is just a list of names. Inside Santa Clara, this kind of move is almost like a note slipped under the door. The team saw something, compared quickly, and decided not to wait. Larry Worth III came in as an undrafted linebacker, took part in rookie minicamp, and walked out with a 3-year deal. To make room, the 49ers released Milo Eifler, who had signed a reserve future contract on January 7. And this is where the behind-the-scenes read matters. Rookie minicamp is not just a showcase for pretty numbers, it is an absorption test. A player walks into a new building, gets new language, new technique, new installs, new pressure, and the staff watches who can keep up without always looking half a second late. If Worth got through that and earned a contract, that does not mean he is locked into the final roster. Not even close. But it does mean that among the bodies being evaluated in that moment, he convinced important people that he deserves a longer look once the competition gets heavier. His profile helps explain the bet. Worth is 6'4", 226 pounds, and played 47 college games with 21 starts across Jacksonville State and Arkansas. The total production is not empty. 201 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 6 passes defended, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 interception. In 2025 at Arkansas, he had 64 tackles in 12 games with 11 starts. In 2023 at Jacksonville State, he produced 6 tackles for loss and 3 sacks. So we are not talking about a player with no history of volume, responsibility, or some versatility. Now the real question is this: where does he fit on a team that needs to turn depth into an advantage? A backup linebacker in San Francisco cannot just be a name on a spreadsheet. He has to run on special teams, understand angles, hit with conviction, cover space, and not wreck the defense if he enters because of an injury or a specific package. That is what separates a camp dream from a real roster spot. Cutting Eifler shows the bar was raised early. The 49ers are not keeping everybody around out of sympathy. They are testing, swapping, and looking for utility. Worth earned the next conversation. Now he has to prove this signing was not just a good impression in May, but the beginning of a real depth battle. Now the conversation moves out of minicamp and into the kind of league backroom talk executives track with one hand on the phone and the other on the calculator. Jacksonville has become a hard team to read. The Jaguars let key pieces like Travis Etienne Jr. and Devin Lloyd leave in free agency, took criticism for the way they attacked the draft, and according to Mike Sando of The Athletic, one unnamed executive said he did not like what Jacksonville did at all because the picks looked more driven by numbers, workouts, and pro days than by film. When that kind of evaluation starts floating around the league, everybody pays attention. Not because one anonymous comment decides the future of a franchise, but because it shows a perception. Jacksonville is reshaping its identity. Liam Cohen and James Gladstone seem interested in building a roster that looks like their own. And when new leadership starts doing that, expensive veterans always become names to watch. That is where Arik Armstead enters the story. He was productive last season, with 5.5 sacks and 28 combined tackles. He is also 32 years old. And the financial detail changes the whole weight of the conversation. The Jaguars could save $14.5 million by trading Armstead after June 1, while moving him before then would save only $2.3 million. That calendar is not just front office paperwork, it is exactly the kind of thing that can turn a player from part of the roster into a possible market asset once the league gets into the summer. For the 49ers, the name brings both an emotional layer and a football layer. Armstead knows San Francisco, the fan base knows the player, but nostalgia does not build a rotation by itself. The real question would be this: if Jacksonville actually listens to offers, is there a role, cost, and urgency that makes sense for a defense trying to put fear back into the line of scrimmage? Because on the field, the idea has logic. San Francisco has always lived through pressure, depth, rotation, and power up front. Armstead does not need to be sold as a savior. He could be viewed as a reinforcement piece, an inside presence, an experienced body for important downs, someone who understands physical football and does not blink at major responsibility. But the staff would have to measure age, contract, compensation, and how much burst is still there. And here is the most interesting detail. Jacksonville has already started reloading the defensive line. They traded for Rourke and drafted Albert Regis and Wesley Williams in rounds 3 and 4. That does not automatically push Armstead out, but it does put a shadow behind him. If the Jaguars want to create financial space and speed up the new build, the phone could ring. And if it rings, John Lynch does not need to put on a show. He at least needs to listen. The third story does not have national headline shine, but it could affect Brock Purdy's Sundays more than a lot of loud off-season talk. Carver Willis enters the 49ers picture with a real path to compete at left guard. And when we talk about the backroom view, this is exactly the position where the public message is usually calm, while inside the building the staff is doing hard math. Who can handle the weight? Who can learn fast? Who does not become the target point for opposing defenses? Willis was picked outside the top 100, so the read has to be grown up. Historically, offensive linemen drafted in a similar range, especially guys who played guard in college or moved to guard in the NFL, do not usually become full-time starters right away. The sample mentioned is large, 88 players since 2012, averaging 4 starts as rookies. When the filter looks at the most comparable group, the average gets closer to 5 starts. That puts a grounded expectation on Willis. Around 5 starts would already be a realistic rookie year. But here's where the case gets more alive. Historical averages do not take the field. Situations do. And the 49ers situation opens a crack. Willis is competing with Robert Jones and Connor Colby for the left guard job. Jones has more experience, but he is coming off a season affected by injuries. Colby already started games there and knows the system, but he also ended up on the bench once the team found other options. So there is no absolute owner of that chair. There is a spot written in pencil. For Willis, the challenge is not just getting reps, it is changing positions at NFL speed. He played tackle in college and now he has to adapt inside, where contact comes faster, space disappears, stunt recognition is brutal, and anchor strength becomes survival. Guard is not just shorter tackle. It is a different rhythm, a different kind of collision, a different responsibility in the run game and in protection. And for a team living under championship expectations, that detail cannot be romanticized. If Willis shows leverage, communication, and timing, he can beat the historical average and become a cheap answer at a sensitive spot. If he takes too long, the 49ers can protect the structure with someone more predictable. That is the fight. Upside against immediate trust. And I want to throw this one to the Niners' war room. Would you let Willis learn by playing if he shows the higher ceiling, or would you choose the safer veteran to protect Purdy from week 1? Because left guard may not sell jerseys, but when that spot breaks down, everybody finds out fast. The fourth story is the kind of thing a lot of people skip because they see third quarterback and think nothing important lives there. But in San Francisco, even that chair has a backroom read. Kurtis Rourke was a 7th-round pick in 2025, a cheap, patient investment made with the understanding that his first year would probably be more about recovery and development than a real competition. He was coming off a torn ACL in his final college season and somehow played through it. Now that waiting year is behind him, and the fieldwork starts saying more than any old scouting sheet. The top of the room is settled. Brock Purdy is the unquestioned starter, and Mac Jones is the immediate backup. The real fight comes after that. Rourke against Adrian Martinez, who spent roster time in 2025 when Purdy missed 8 games with turf toe. Normally that would be small camp talk. But the 49ers are in a phase where every backup piece needs to carry some kind of future value, and Rourke might carry more than it looks like. The reason is Mac Jones. He is under contract through 2027, but the read being presented is that he is unlikely to stay in San Francisco once that deal expires, especially if he uses his recent strong response as proof that he got his career moving again. So the team has to think about QB2 succession before it gets boxed in. If Rourke develops quickly, the staff gains comfort. And in the NFL, comfort turns into freedom. Rourke did not arrive without a resume. In 2024, he finished with 3,042 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and led the NCAA with 9.5 yards per pass attempt. That does not make him a ready-made NFL answer, but it shows why the team wanted to hold on to this ticket. He has production, an arm to attack, and now he has to show if he can translate it inside Kyle Shanahan's rhythm. timing, reads, ball security, a clean huddle, and fast decisions. And that is where the most interesting scenario comes in. If Rourke impresses early enough to convince the coaches he can hold the backup job, Mac Jones becomes a more useful trade piece. Interest in him cooled earlier this offseason, but one injury to a starting quarterback somewhere else can change the league's mood fast. The Teddy Bridgewater injury in 2016, when Minnesota ended up going after Sam Bradford, is the reminder of how desperation changes price and urgency. If Rourke does not accelerate, everything comes back down to earth. He and Martinez battle for a job that does not carry much glamour until week 1. But if he shows something real, this is no longer just a QB3 battle. It becomes planning, protection against the future, and maybe even a way to turn depth into an asset. At the end of the day, this episode is not about easy headlines. It is about reading the small stuff. Worth got a chance because Santa Clara saw something in the details. Armstead becomes a name to monitor because contract, age, and calendar could open a door. Willis is entering a battle that could protect or expose Purdy. Rourke turns QB3 into future planning. That is how a contender works. Before the noise, before Sunday, before the pressure arrives. If you want to track these clues every day, subscribe, turn on the bell, and come back for the next video. Because the 49ers are being built behind the scenes.